Welcome to the Will to Power podcast. I'm your host, Nick Vital. Today I'm talking about a few topics. I'm going to be talking about MAGA communism, this interesting trend recently. I'm going to be talking about where it comes from, what it is, how it's growing in popularity. I'm going to be talking about my own diamond ring theory. And I'm going to be discussing a little bit about populism, authoritarianism, and more. So let's get into it. So in the last few weeks, there's been this rising trend. First, it trended on Twitter, and it's been a bit on YouTube, but it's been written about too. I think Compact magazine has written about it, and it's called MAGA Communism. That's right, MAGA, the Trump movement, and communism together. And this has kind of been spearheaded by Haas, a YouTube, influencer. I don't know. I don't watch him, but very interesting. I've seen a couple of his clips, and actually I've read some of his stuff. I like his writing a little bit more. I'm a theory cell, so I like writing more than watching people talk. But very interesting stuff, and I'll leave a link to his Substack. But what he's essentially been doing is he's been taking the grassroots populism that's kind of bubbled up in the United States versus in response to kind of growing corporate overreach, let's say that. And you've seen this with the kind of anti-establishment political figures that have come up. People like Donald Trump, this kind of person who came somewhat out of nowhere, obviously, like nothing is that novel, so he was kind of in the zeitgeist, so to speak, but definitely an outsider when it came to politics, entering the political sphere. Of course, the media, the other arm of the state, and the establishment went into a tizzy, and people kind of recognized this, right? And over time, I think Trump grew on a lot of people who initially dismissed him or thought he was reactionary and whatnot. But if you have Hillary Clinton hating you, then you can't be that bad. And I guess it could be kayfabe to some extent, right? It always is. But nonetheless, it kind of indicated that something was kind of underneath the surface, this sort of uprising against the extant order of things. So this has been MAGA communism. It's kind of being fusing this juxtaposition of the MAGA movement, which is traditionally seen as largely white, middle class, socially conservative, with communism, with kind of a Marxist-Leninist approach to, how society ought to be and how people ought to try to get there, how to organize for it. So it's been very interesting. It's definitely something that's new and novel, and I think it's something that should be looked into and pursued further. And that's the point of this podcast. And I don't want it to be like this ringing endorsement of like, oh, MAGA communism is the path or whatnot, anything like that. But I think it does kind of indicate something important. And interestingly enough, a few days before somebody tweeted about MAGA communism, there was a post on Lefty Poll. And I don't want to say that I posted it, but I'll put a screenshot up. And basically it was this guy, it was a bait post, obviously, a troll post on Lefty Poll. And you should check out Lefty Troll. It's a Telegram channel that kind of collects some of these bait posts that have been posted. And it essentially wrote, is MAGA socialism real? Hi guys, I'm a leftist, and all of my relatives used to be conservative libertarians, but now they're talking about MAGA socialism, and it's pissing me off. And I try to explain to them that we need proletarian revolution led by oppressed POC people or some bullshit like this. That went a little bit too far, and people kind of recognized the bait in that. But nonetheless, I was kind of creating this bait post where I'm like this kind of faggot leftist, and I'm complaining about my uncles loudly proclaiming themselves as MAGA socialists in a bellicose way. So that was a bait post that I posted on Lefty Poll. And then a few days later, this kind of MAGA communism trend emerges on Twitter. And I think it's, maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it's meme magic, who knows? I think it's meme magic. But it does kind of indicate that there is something to this, that the spirit of it has potential. And that's what I want to talk about next, is the diamond ring theory. Now, you've probably heard of the horseshoe theory. It's this kind of cringy centrist trope. And it basically states that on the far ends of the political spectrum, both ends start to veer off towards in a similar direction of authoritarianism. And, it's usually one of those things that centrist people kind of without a spine, agnostic know-nothings, and kind of political corporate opportunists will say. Equal rights sort of thing. But I think at this point in history, it's worth looking into, but in a different way. We should look at it as a diamond ring, right? So in a diamond ring, you kind of have a circle, and you have the left and the right, and then from the center, from the bottom, once they come back together, you get this valuable zone, this zone of potential, so to speak. And this is the diamond ring theory. It's that there needs to be pulling aspects of the left and right together. Because obviously, like, fusionism is gonna, nobody cares about fucking libertarianism. That's not part of the right. And in terms of the left, there is this kind of growing dissatisfaction with identity politics, and even with some of the more faggy aspects of the left. Right? I've been trying to meme something like esoteric bro socialism into esoteric Jim Bro socialism, right? That's the new thing, vitalistic socialism. So this has definitely been a project that I've been a little bit working on, but I think it's an interesting notion, this kind of fusion of the left and the right, finding kind of right-wing aspects within traditionally far-left writers like Mao and Linen, and then looking for the same left-wing characteristics in traditionally right-wing authors, whether it be like Mishima, Vola, Strasser, these sort of people. And, you don't have to really be a theory cell about it as well. Like, I have kind of a background in reading like Lenin and Mao, so I can do it really easily, right? I'm like, I can pick out the little things that contradict each other and that can be used to promote right-wing thinking. I'll give you a couple of examples now, right? There's a famous Mao quote, dare to struggle, dare to win, right? And how I tend to phrase this is, well, that's the teleological goal, right? Like, we should never try to create a society in which people don't struggle. That's a terrible thing. They need to struggle. They need to be challenged. They need to grow in that sense. So we should make kind of a society in which struggle is promoted as a sort of goal in and of itself, rather than equality, rights, that sort of thing. Same thing with Lenin's vanguard party, right? Like, communism is traditionally seen as this lowest common denominator, like the masses sort of thing. But Lenin's theory of organizing itself is very elitist, right? He called for a vanguard party of professional revolutionaries. Now, what this meant was that people, I guess the actual term was occupational. So these people, he wanted a small party, central party, of highly dedicated and highly qualified people. People who were disciplined, people who had capabilities, these sorts of things, people who had courage and would do shit like Stalin, robbing banks and shit like that. So even though kind of like leftism and Marxism is traditionally seen as this kind of sort of populist thing, there's also this vein of kind of, I don't want to say authoritarian, but kind of elitism, this sort of like professionalism, the seeking of higher quality people. There's a pamphlet written by Lenin where it's better, fewer, but better, less people, but better. So I think that's an important notion as well, something that should be looked into and promoted. Now, I do want to also talk about the problems of authoritarianism, and I'll get into that in just a moment. This is a critique I would have a lot of both far left and far right sort of ideas and ideologues. And that is, if the goal is to create a higher sort of people, you can't do that through authoritarianism, right? You can only create kind of slavish, sheepish people who just kind of, okay, I gotta go along with the system, otherwise I'm gonna, be stamped down very hard. So I'm just going to do it. And you kind of create, like I said, like spineless, courageless people who can't, they can kind of get along well in their own lives. But they're not the sort of people who are capable of really seizing the reins of society, pushing it into a positive direction. They just kind of get along. And I think you want to do something better than that. And you really have to have social programs and means and systems of inculcating qualities like leadership, like courage, like decisiveness. And you have to do this within the political realm as well, right? It can't just all be yes men soldiers sort of thing. So that's an issue with authoritarianism. You need a system which uses freedom to some extent, not because freedom is inherently this good thing, but because it creates people who are capable of being free, who are capable of pushing their lives in a positive direction, and therefore more capable of contributing to society in a similar manner. So this has been a very short episode, but I wanted to talk about these important things. I think MAGA socialism is an important trend. It might be a flash in the pan, but I think it's something that's important to push into the zeitgeist. This notion of the kind of a fusion of the left and the right, which embraces both the best of populism, vanguardism, and these sorts of things. So it's the diamond ring theory, and rejecting that sort of kind of fake, let's get along, opportunistic centricism that's just, let's do business as usual sort of thing, and instead embracing a kind of alternative center that fuses the best of the left and the right, that rejects the gayness of the left and the retardation of the right, if that makes sense. So this has been Nick Vital. If you enjoyed this, please like, share, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. I will catch you later. Peace.